The morning Earth's sun rose on the most important day in human history, started like any other. General Kate Morgan was reviewing patrol reports when every alarm in Earth Defense Command began screaming at once. Commander Ben Walsh burst into her office with his face pale and his hands shaking. "General, you need to see this right now," Ben said as he activated the main display. Something massive just appeared at the edge of the solar system. Kate looked at the tactical screen and felt her heart stop. A ship 3 kilometers long hung in space beyond Pluto's orbit, its hull gleaming with impossible energy patterns. The USS Retribution had come home, but it was not the vessel that had vanished 50 years ago. This ship looked like it had been rebuilt by gods. President Steve Collins arrived within minutes, along with Dr. Amy Carter and what remained of Earth's senior military staff. They all stood in stunned silence as sensors provided more details about the legendary vessel. The hull was covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Weapons of unknown design lined every surface. Energy readings suggested power levels that could fuel entire civilizations. "How is this possible?" Amy whispered as she studied the sensor data. "The technology we're seeing shouldn't exist for another 1,000 years. The communication system activated without warning, and a familiar voice filled the command center. Captain Jake Harrison sounded older and somehow different, as if 50 years had changed him into something more than human. "Earth Defense Command. This is Captain Harrison of the USS Retribution requesting permission to approach." Kate activated the reply system with trembling hands. "Captain Harrison, this is General Morgan. Permission granted. The entire planet has been waiting for your return." "Thank you, General. We are coming home, but there are things you need to understand before we dock. We are not the same crew that left 50 years ago." The Retribution began moving toward Earth, its massive bulk gliding through space with grace that seemed to defy physics. As it passed each planet, long-range sensors got better readings on the ship's impossible modifications. Every system had been rebuilt with technology that looked like magic compared to human science. Ben watched the tactical display with wonder. "General, look at the power signatures. That ship could probably destroy our entire defense fleet without breaking stride." Steve Collins was already on the communication system with world leaders, trying to prepare humanity for what was coming. The return of the Retribution would change everything, but no one knew what that meant for Earth's future. Were they about to be liberated from Zephyrian rule, or had their greatest weapon become something they could no longer control? 6 hours later, the Retribution entered Earth orbit, and Kate got her first close look at the transformed vessel. The ship's hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, and the energy patterns covering its surface pulsed with colors that had no names. This was not just advanced technology, it was something beyond human understanding. "Earth Defense Command, requesting permission to beam aboard a diplomatic party," Captain Harrison said over the communication system. Kate approved the request, and minutes later, 3 figures materialized in the command center using technology that Earth scientists could not even begin to explain. Captain Jake Harrison stood in the center, still recognizable but changed in ways that were hard to define. His eyes seemed to hold depths that had not been there before, and when he moved, space itself seemed to bend slightly around him. Commander Lisa Parker stood at his right side, but she was no longer entirely human. Geometric patterns covered. Her skin and her eyes glowed with inner light. When she spoke, Her voice seemed to come from multiple dimensions at once. "It is good to see Earth again. We have traveled far to return to you." Dr. Alex Stone completed the trio, but he had been transformed the most. His body seemed to be partially made of energy, shifting between solid matter and pure light. When Kate looked directly at him, she could see equations and formulas floating in the air around his form. He had become living science. "My God," Amy Carter breathed. "What happened to you out there?" Captain Harrison smiled sadly. "We were chosen, Dr. Carter. When the Retribution vanished 50 years ago, we were pulled through a spatial anomaly into a region of space controlled by an ancient civilization called the Architects. They were the oldest race in the galaxy, and they were dying." President Collins stepped forward cautiously. "Dying how?" "Their entire species was facing extinction from a threat that consumes whole galaxies," Lisa Parker said, her voice echoing strangely. The Architects had spent millions of years fighting an enemy called the Devourers, machine intelligences that convert all matter into more of themselves. Dr. Stone flickered between solid and energy form as he spoke. "The Architects chose to share their technology with us because they recognized humanity's potential. They spent 50 years teaching us, transforming us, preparing us for what is coming." Kate felt a chill run through her bones. "What exactly is coming?" Harrison activated a holographic display that showed star maps of the galaxy. Red markers indicated systems that had gone dark over the past 1,000 years, and the pattern was terrifying. An entire spiral arm of the galaxy had been consumed, leaving behind only empty space where billions of civilizations once lived. "The Devourers are systematic," Harrison explained. "They consume one sector at a time, converting all matter into their war machines. Our sector is next on their list." Ben studied the display with growing horror. "How long do we have?" 18 months, Lisa answered. "Maybe less. The advanced scouts are already probing our region of space. When the main fleet arrives, it will consist of billions of ships, each one capable of destroying planets." The command center fell silent as everyone tried to process the magnitude of the threat. The Zephyrian Empire had seemed like humanity's greatest enemy, but compared to galaxy-consuming machines, the aliens were just another potential victim. Amy Carter was the first to find her voice. "How can we possibly fight something like that? If they've already consumed half the galaxy, what chance does Earth have?" Dr. Stone smiled, and his energy form brightened. "That is why the Architects chose us. Humanity has something special, something that other races lack. We adapt, we innovate, and we never surrender even when facing impossible odds." Harrison nodded. "The Architects gave us their technology, but more importantly, they taught us how to use it. The Retribution is now more than a warship. It is a factory capable of building entire fleets using Architect science." "We can upgrade Earth's ships," Parker added. "Transform your defense forces into something that can stand against the Devourers, but it will require humanity to work together like never before." President Collins asked the question everyone was thinking. "What about the Zephyrians? They still control half of human space." "The Zephyrians will join us or they will die," Harrison said simply. "The Devourers do not distinguish between human and alien. All organic life is fuel for their machines." Kate looked around the command center at her people and saw fear mixed with determination. Earth had spent 50 years under alien rule, dreaming of freedom. Now freedom had returned in a form they never expected, bringing with it responsibilities. That staggered the imagination. "What do you need from us?" Kate asked. Harrison gestured to his transformed crew. "Time and trust. We must begin upgrading your ships immediately. Every vessel in Earth's fleet will need architect technology to survive what is coming." Dr. Stone stepped forward, his energy form stabilizing into something more human-like. "We will also need to train your people. The technology we are sharing will change them as it changed us. Not everyone will survive the transformation." Amy Carter overcame her fear and approached the energy being that had once been human. "Dr. Stone, are you still human?" The scientist considered the question carefully. "I am something more than human now, but I still remember what it means to be human. That is what will save us in the end. The Devourers are pure logic and efficiency, but they cannot understand sacrifice, love, or hope. President Collins made the decision that would determine humanity's fate. Captain Harrison, Earth is yours to command. Do whatever you need to do to prepare us for this war." Harrison nodded gravely. "Then we begin immediately. The Retribution will establish construction facilities in orbit around Earth. Every shipyard will be converted to build architect-enhanced vessels. Every soldier will be trained in technologies that will seem like magic." As the meeting ended and plans began to form, Kate looked out at the Earth, spinning slowly below. In 18 months, this peaceful blue world would face an enemy that had destroyed countless civilizations across the galaxy. But for the first time in 50 years, humanity had hope. The Retribution hung in space above them like a guardian angel made of steel and starlight, and its crew had returned to save not just Earth, but all life in their corner of the galaxy. The attacks were getting bolder, and the Zephyrian Empire was starting to panic. What began as isolated incidents had grown into something that threatened their control over human space. Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian High Command stood in the war room of his flagship, staring at a tactical display that showed 23 destroyed patrol ships scattered across 6 star systems. Commander Ben Walsh sat in the intelligence briefing room aboard Earth Defense Station, reviewing the latest reports that had been shared with human authorities. The Zephyrians were no longer trying to hide their concern. They needed human help to understand what was happening in their own territory, and that fact alone showed how serious the situation had become. "The pattern is escalating," Ben told General Kate Morgan as she entered the room. "Last week it was single patrol ships. Now entire squadrons are disappearing." Kate studied the star map on the main display. Red markers showed the locations of confirmed attacks, and the pattern was becoming clear. Whatever was out there was moving methodically through Zephyrian space, testing their defenses and learning their tactics. Each attack was more daring than the last. Dr. Amy Carter arrived with her latest analysis, looking both excited and worried at the same time. "I've been studying the debris from the squadron that was destroyed near Proxima. The weapon signatures are definitely getting stronger. Whatever ship is doing this, it's not just using advanced technology anymore. It's using weapons that shouldn't be possible." "How do you mean impossible?" Kate asked. Amy activated a holographic display showing molecular patterns from the debris. "The damage was caused by some kind of exotic matter weapon. The Zephyrian ships weren't just destroyed. They were partially converted into something else at the quantum level. This is science fiction technology made real." Ben leaned forward to study the display. Could the Retribution have developed weapons like this during 50 years in unknown space? Before Amy could answer, an urgent alert echoed through the station. President Steve Collins appeared on the main communication screen, his face pale with worry. "Kate, we have a situation." The Zephyrian High Command is demanding an immediate meeting. They want answers about these attacks, and they're threatening severe consequences if we don't provide them. Kate felt her stomach tighten. What kind of consequences? They're talking about orbital bombardment of our outer colonies. They claim Earth must be hiding advanced weapons programs, and they want full access to all our military facilities. The threat was serious, and everyone in the room knew it. The Zephyrians had the power to turn human worlds into smoking ruins, and they had done it before when colonies tried to rebel. Earth could not afford to call their bluff because losing meant the deaths of millions of innocent people. We need proof, Kate said firmly. If the retribution really has returned, we need evidence that will convince the Zephyrians we're not behind these attacks. Ben stood up suddenly, an idea forming in his mind. What if we try to make contact? The attacks are happening in a pattern. If Captain Harrison is really out there, maybe we can predict where he'll strike next. Amy consulted her data and pointed to a spot on the star map. Based on the progression so far, the next logical target would be the Zephyrian Supply Depot at Kepler 4042. It's a major logistics hub for their patrols in this sector. Kate made a decision that could change everything. Ben, take a fast courier ship and get to Kepler 442. If our ghost ship appears, try to establish communication. Amy, prepare a full technical briefing on the weapon signatures. We need proof that this technology is beyond human capabilities. 3 days later, Ben Walsh guided his small ship toward the Kepler 442 system. The courier vessel was barely larger than a fighter, but it was fast and equipped with the best sensors Earth could provide. As he approached the Zephyrian depot, Ben saw 12 alien warships on patrol around a massive space station that supplied their forces throughout the sector. The depot was heavily defended because it contained enough weapons and supplies to equip an entire fleet. If someone wanted to cripple Zephyrian operations in human space, this would be the perfect target. Ben positioned his ship at the edge of the system and activated all passive sensors, waiting to see if the legends were true. He did not have to wait long. At exactly 13:47 hours, space itself seemed to ripple near the depot. Energy readings spiked off the scale, and then something impossible appeared from nothing. The USS Retribution materialized like a ghost ship emerging from another dimension. But it was not the vessel Ben had seen in historical records. The ship was still 3 kilometers long, but its hull had been transformed. Strange geometric patterns covered the surface, glowing with energy that hurt to look at directly. Weapons that had no names in human language lined the sides where quantum cannons used to be. The entire vessel pulsed with power that made Ben's instruments scream warnings about impossible energy levels. The Zephyrian ships reacted immediately, opening fire with everything they had. Plasma bolts and particle beams struck the Retribution's hull and simply vanished, absorbed by shields that seemed to bend space itself. The great ship did not even slow down as it moved toward the depot like death incarnate. What happened next would be talked about for centuries. The Retribution fired a single weapon that looked like a beam of twisted starlight. The exotic energy struck the space station and began converting its matter into something else. Within seconds, the massive depot simply ceased to exist, leaving behind only strange particles that made Ben's sensors malfunction. The Zephyrian warships tried to retreat, but they were too slow. The Retribution turned its impossible weapons on them one by one, and each shot erased another enemy vessel from existence. In less than 10 minutes, the entire Zephyrian force was gone, and the depot had been reduced to cosmic dust. Ben activated his communication system with trembling hands. Unknown vessel. This is Commander Ben Walsh of the Earth Defense Force. Please respond. For a long moment there was only silence. Then a voice answered that Ben recognized from historical recordings. Captain Jake Harrison sounded older and changed, but it was definitely him. Commander Walsh, it has been a long time since we heard from home. Captain Harrison, sir. Earth needs to know. Where have you been for 50 years? The reply came after, a pause that seemed to last forever. We have been learning, Commander. Learning things that humanity will need to survive what is coming. But that conversation will have to wait. We are not ready to return home yet. Sir, the Zephyrians think Earth is behind these attacks. They're threatening to destroy our colonies. They will not harm Earth, Harrison said with absolute certainty. We will not allow it. Tell your leaders that humanity's protection has returned, but the real war has not even begun yet. When we are ready, we will come home. Until then, trust that we are preparing for something far worse than the Zephyrian Empire. Before Ben could ask what he meant, the retribution began to fade from sensors. Space rippled again, and the impossible ship vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving behind only scattered particles and energy readings that would puzzle scientists for years. Ben transmitted his findings back to Earth, knowing that everything had changed. The retribution was real and it was protecting human space, but Captain Harrison's words suggested that greater threats were coming. The Zephyrians would have to believe Earth was innocent because no human technology could do what Ben had witnessed. Back on Earth, General Kate Morgan received Ben's report with a mixture of relief and worry. The mystery attacks now made sense, but Harrison's warning about worse threats raised new questions. What had the Retribution's crew learned during their 50 years in unknown space? What enemy was so dangerous that humanity's greatest weapon needed decades to prepare for it? Dr. Amy Carter analyzed the sensor data from Ben's encounter and shook her head in amazement. The energy patterns are beyond anything we've ever seen. Whatever technology they've acquired, it's not from this galaxy. President Steve Collins faced the difficult task of convincing the Zephyrians that Earth was innocent without revealing the truth about the retribution. The alien empire would panic if they knew humanity's greatest weapon had returned more powerful than ever, and panic might lead them to attack Earth preemptively. As news of the depot's destruction spread through Zephyrian space, their fleets began pulling back from human territory. The message was clear. Something was hunting them in the dark, and their overwhelming military advantage meant nothing against an enemy that could erase entire installations with weapons that violated the laws of physics. The age of Zephyrian dominance was ending, but none of them knew what would replace it. 50 years had passed since the USS Retribution disappeared, and Earth looked very different now. The blue planet still spun around its yellow sun, but the proud human civilization that once reached for the stars had been brought low. Zephyrian ships patrolled the solar system like sharks in dark water, making sure their human subjects stayed in line. General Kate Morgan stood at the window of Earth Defense Command and watched an alien patrol ship glide past the space station. The purple hull gleamed with the same deadly beauty that had terrorized humanity for half a century. Kate's jaw tightened as she remembered the stories her grandfather used to tell about the days when humans could travel freely among the stars. The war had ended badly for Earth. Without the retribution to protect them, human colonies fell like dominoes to the Zephyrian war machine. The peace treaty signed in 2390 was really just a surrender document dressed up with fancy words. Humanity lost half their colonies and accepted Zephyrian protection zones around the rest. Earth's military was reduced to a small defense force that could barely handle pirates, let alone challenge alien rule. Commander Ben Walsh entered Kate's office carrying a data pad with the morning reports. The young officer had been born after the war ended, so he only knew the galaxy as it was now, with humans as second-class citizens in their own corner of space. But Ben had grown up hearing legends about the great ship that vanished, and sometimes Kate caught him staring at the old pictures on her office wall. "General, we have the weekly patrol reports from the outer colonies," Ben said as he handed her the data pad. "Everything looks normal except for this strange incident near the Kepler system." Kate read the report with growing interest. A Zephyrian patrol ship had gone missing 3 days ago while investigating some kind of disturbance. The alien vessel had sent a brief distress signal before all contact was lost. When rescue ships arrived, they found only scattered debris and energy readings that made no sense. "This is the third incident this month," Kate said thoughtfully. "First that outpost near Vega, then the convoy at Wolf 359, and now this. Something is happening out there." Ben nodded eagerly. "The patterns are strange, too. Whatever destroyed these ships used weapons far more advanced than anything humans are supposed to have. The Zephyrians are starting to ask questions." Dr. Amy Carter chose that moment to arrive at Kate's office. The xenobiologist was carrying an armload of data crystals and looked like she had not slept in days. Amy had spent most of her career studying captured Zephyrian technology, trying to understand how their enemies had become so powerful. It was frustrating work because the aliens only shared their oldest and least useful inventions with their human subjects. "Kate, you need to see this," Amy said as she spread the crystals across the desk. "I've been analyzing the debris from those mystery attacks. The molecular patterns are definitely human in origin, but the technology is impossible." Kate raised an eyebrow. "Impossible how?" "The energy signatures suggest quantum weapons at least 50 years more advanced than anything we've ever built. The metal fragments show signs of exposure to exotic particles that we don't even have names for. Whatever ship is doing this, it's using science that shouldn't exist." Ben leaned forward with excitement. "Could it be a secret Earth project? Maybe something the military has been working on in hidden facilities?" Kate shook her head. "I would know about any major weapons programs. The Zephyrians monitor everything we do too closely for us to hide something like this." President Steve Collins arrived at that moment, looking tired and worried as usual. The leader of Earth's reduced government carried the weight of 4 billion people on his shoulders, and it showed in every line on his face. Steve had been trying for years to negotiate better terms with the Zephyrian Empire, but the aliens seemed content to keep humanity firmly under their control. "Kate, I just got off a communication with the Zephyrian High Command," Steve said heavily. "They're demanding answers about these attacks on their ships. They think we're behind them somehow." "What did you tell them?" Kate asked. "The truth. That we have no idea what's causing these incidents. But they don't believe me. The Zephyrian Admiral threatened to increase military patrols around our colonies if the attacks continue." Amy looked up from her data crystals with concern. "More patrols would make life even harder for the colonists. They're already struggling under the current restrictions." The group fell silent as they considered their options. Earth was caught between a mystery they could not solve and alien overlords who held their people's lives in their hands. The Zephyrians had ruled through fear for 50 years, and they were very good at it. Ben was the first to speak again. "General, what if these attacks aren't random? Look at the targets: remote outposts, patrol ships, supply convoys. Someone is testing Zephyrian defenses and learning their weaknesses." Kate studied the reports more carefully. The young commander had a point. The attacks were scattered across human space, but they all targeted military assets. No civilian ships or colonies had been touched. Whoever was responsible seemed to be following some kind of plan. "Amy, is there anything else unusual about the debris?" Kate asked. The scientist nodded slowly. "There's one more thing. Trace elements in the metal show exposure to a very specific type of quantum radiation. I've only seen patterns like this once before, in archived data from the old war." "What kind of archived data?" "Sensor logs from battles involving the USS Retribution. The quantum signatures are nearly identical." The room went completely quiet. For 50 years, no one had dared to hope that the great ship might still exist. Somewhere. The official record said it was destroyed, lost with all hands in the final battle. But legends persisted among the fleet. Stories whispered in quiet corners about humanity's greatest weapon waiting in the dark between stars. Steve Collins broke the silence. "That's impossible. The Retribution was destroyed decades ago." "Was it?" Ben asked quietly. "The ship vanished during that strange energy event. No wreckage was ever found. What if it didn't die? What if it's been out there all this time, waiting?" Kate felt a chill run down her spine. She had served under Admiral Blake in her early career and heard his stories about the legendary ship. The old admiral had gone to his grave believing that Captain Harrison and his crew were still alive somewhere, and now it seemed he might have been right. Dr. Carter was already running new analysis on her data crystals. If the Retribution survived, it would explain everything. A ship that advanced could easily destroy Zephyrian patrols, and 50 years in unknown space could account for the technological improvements we're seeing in the debris. But why would they wait so long to return? Ben wondered. Where have they been all this time? Kate walked back to the window and stared out at the alien patrol ship. In her mind, she could see the Retribution as it appeared in the old war footage. A magnificent weapon of human engineering cutting through enemy formations like an avenging angel. If that ship had somehow returned, it might be the answer to 50 years of prayers. Maybe they weren't ready before now, she said thoughtfully. Maybe they needed time to prepare for whatever comes next. President Collins joined her at the window. If the Retribution has returned, what does that mean for Earth? The Zephyrians won't just ignore a threat like that. It means hope, Kate replied. For the first time in 50 years, it means hope. Outside the space station, the Zephyrian patrol ship continued its endless circuit around Earth. The aliens had grown comfortable in their role as overlords, confident that humanity would never again pose a serious threat to their empire. They had broken human spirit and reduced Earth's children to servants in their own galaxy. But in the dark spaces between stars, something was stirring. The ghost stories were becoming real, and the Zephyrian Empire was about to learn that some weapons are too dangerous to ever truly die. Humanity's greatest champion was returning from the void, and this time it would not disappear so easily. The age of human submission was ending, and none of them knew it yet. The stars looked cold and distant as Captain Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the USS Retribution. The massive warship cut through space like a knife through water, its engines humming with power that could level mountains. Jake watched the main screen showing empty space ahead, but he knew the enemy was out there waiting. The year was 2387, and humanity was at war. The Zephyrian Empire had started the fight by attacking human colonies without warning. Their ships were fast, and their weapons deadly, but humans had something the aliens did not expect. They had the Retribution. The ship was 3 kilometers long and packed with the best weapons Earth could build. Quantum cannons lined its hull like teeth on a shark. Shield generators powerful enough to stop asteroid impacts protected every inch of the vessel. Inside its armored belly, 2,000 of Earth's finest soldiers and scientists worked day and night to keep humanity safe. Commander Lisa Parker walked up to Jake's side. She was his second in command and the smartest tactical officer in the fleet. Her dark hair was pulled back tight and her eyes never missed a detail. "Captain, we're getting close to the target zone. Sensors show Zephyrian ships about 20 minutes ahead." Jake nodded and turned to face his crew. The bridge was filled with the best people Earth had to offer. At the science station, Dr. Alex Stone monitored the ship's experimental weapons. The young scientist had spent years perfecting the quantum technology that made the Retribution so deadly. Near the back of the bridge, Admiral Ron Blake stood watching everything with careful eyes. The old warrior had commanded Earth's fleet for 30 years and had personally chosen Jake to captain humanity's greatest weapon. "All hands to battle stations," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. Throughout the massive vessel, crew members rushed to their positions. Gun crews loaded the quantum cannons, engineers checked the shield systems. Fighter pilots climbed into their small ships and waited for launch orders. The enemy appeared on sensors exactly when Lisa had predicted. 12 Zephyrian warships moved in formation toward human space. They were sleek vessels with purple hulls that gleamed like jewels in the starlight. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a city, but together they were no match for the Retribution. "Target the lead ship," Jake ordered. "Fire quantum cannons 1 through 4. The ship's main weapons discharged with barely a sound. 4 beams of pure energy shot across space and struck the Zephyrian flagship. The alien vessel's shields held for exactly 3 seconds before collapsing. The quantum energy tore through the hull like paper, and the ship exploded in a ball of blue fire. The other Zephyrian ships scattered and began firing back. Their plasma bolts struck the Retribution's shields and were absorbed without even causing a flicker. Jake smiled grimly. The aliens had never faced anything like his ship before. "Launch fighters," Lisa commanded. "All gun crews open fire at will." 20 human fighters shot from the Retribution's launch bays like angry wasps. They were small and fast, designed to get in close where the big guns could not reach. Behind them, every weapon on the Retribution began firing. Quantum cannons, plasma torpedoes, and particle beams lit up space with deadly light. The battle lasted 15 minutes. When it was over, 11 Zephyrian ships were destroyed, and 1 was fleeing toward the edge of the star system. Jake watched the lone survivor disappear into hyperspace and felt satisfied. Another victory for humanity. "Excellent work, everyone," Admiral Blake said as he approached Jake's command chair. "The Zephyrians are learning they cannot stand against us when we have ships like this." Dr. Stone looked up from his science station with excitement in his eyes. "Captain, the quantum weapons performed even better than expected. We could probably take on twice as many ships next time." Jake was about to respond when the ship's long-range sensors began beeping urgently. Lisa checked her displays and her face went pale. "Captain, we have a problem. There's a massive Zephyrian fleet moving toward the Centauri colonies. At least 50 ships." Admiral Blake's expression darkened. "That's their main battle fleet. If they reach Centauri, they'll kill millions of civilians." Jake did not hesitate. "Set course for Centauri system maximum speed. We can get there before them, if we push the engines." "Sir," Lisa said carefully, "that fleet is much larger than anything we've faced before. Even the Retribution might not be able to handle 50 ships alone. We have to try, Jake replied. Those colonies have no defenses. We're their only hope. The Retribution turned and accelerated toward Centauri. In the engine room, human engineers pushed the fusion reactors to their limits. The ship's speed increased until stars became streaks of light outside the windows. They were racing against time, and the fate of human colonies hung in the balance. 3 hours later, they reached the edge of the Centauri system. The Zephyrian fleet was already there, moving toward the inner planets where millions of humans lived. Jake counted 53 enemy ships, including their largest dreadnoughts. His own ship was powerful, but the odds were terrible. "This is suicide," Admiral Blake said quietly. "Maybe," Jake admitted. "But we're going to make them pay for every inch." The Retribution charged into the enemy formation with all weapons firing. Quantum cannons reached out across space and began destroying Zephyrian ships one by one. The enemy responded with everything they had. Hundreds of plasma bolts struck the human ship's shields, causing them to flicker and spark. For 20 minutes, the battle raged across the Centauri system. The Retribution fought like a wounded lion, destroying ship after ship, but taking terrible damage in return. Fires broke out on multiple decks. The shield generators began to fail. Still, Jake's crew fought on. "Hull breach on Deck 7, someone reported. "Shield Generator 3 is offline." "Reroute power from the secondary systems," Lisa ordered. "Keep those shields up," Dr. Stone called out from his station. "Captain, the quantum core is overheating. If we keep firing at this rate, it might explode." Jake looked at the tactical display. They had destroyed 23 enemy ships, but 30 remained. The Retribution was badly damaged and running out of options. That was when he saw it on the sensors, a strange energy reading from the edge of the system. "What is that?" he asked, pointing at the anomaly. Lisa checked her instruments. "Unknown energy signature. It appears to be some kind of spatial distortion." The distortion began to grow larger and move toward their position. As it approached, strange things started happening. Computer systems flickered, the lights dimmed, even the quantum weapons began to malfunction. "All ships are being affected," Dr. Stone reported with wonder in his voice, "both ours and theirs. It's like space itself is being twisted." The Zephyrian fleet stopped firing and began to retreat. Their ship seemed to be having the same problems as the Retribution. Whatever was happening, it was beyond anything either side had ever seen. Jake tried to order his ship away from the anomaly, but the engines would not respond. The helm controls were dead. All around the bridge, displays went dark one by one. The Retribution was being pulled toward the distortion like a leaf in a whirlpool. "Emergency power!" Jake shouted. "Get us out of here!" But it was too late. The spatial anomaly engulfed the great warship and everything went white. The last thing Jake saw before losing consciousness was his crew fighting desperately at their stations, trying to save their ship and themselves. When the light faded, the USS Retribution was gone. The Zephyrian fleet searched the area for hours, but found nothing. No debris, no energy signatures, no trace that humanity's greatest weapon had ever existed. Back on Earth, Admiral Blake received the news with a heavy heart. The Retribution had vanished without explanation. 2,000 of humanity's best people were missing, including the ship that could have won the war. Without their greatest weapon, Earth's colonies fell one by one to the Zephyrian Empire. The war was lost, and humanity's golden age had ended. The sky above Earth burned with the light of 1,000 suns as the Devourer fleet dropped out of hyperspace. Commander Ben Walsh stood on the bridge of the newly upgraded Earth battleship Guardian, watching sensors count enemy vessels until the numbers became meaningless. There were so many ships that they blocked out stars across half the sky. 18 months of desperate preparation had transformed humanity's defenses beyond recognition. Every vessel in Earth's fleet now carried architect technology that would have been considered impossible just 2 years ago. Quantum shields protected hulls made from exotic matter. Weapons that could tear holes in space itself lined the sides of ships that had once carried simple projectile guns. General Kate Morgan coordinated the defense from Earth Defense Command, but the battle was really being directed by Captain Jake Harrison aboard the USS Retribution. The legendary ship hung in space above Earth like a 3-kilometer sword of light, its hull pulsing with energies that made nearby space ripple like water. "All ships report ready for battle," Ben announced over the fleet communication system. Earth's defenders numbered only 300 vessels, but each one now packed enough firepower to destroy a planet. The transformation process had been painful, and not everyone had survived it. But those who remained were no longer entirely human. Dr. Amy Carter monitored the enemy fleet from her science station, her own body now enhanced with architect technology that let her process information at superhuman speeds. The modification had been voluntary, but irreversible, changing her brain structure to interface directly with computer systems. The Devourers are beginning their approach. Estimated time to engagement, 47 minutes. President Steve Collins addressed the planet from the emergency bunkers beneath Earth's capital cities. Billions of people waited in underground shelters while their transformed defenders prepared to face an enemy that had consumed half the galaxy. The entire human race had gambled everything on technology they barely understood and leaders who were no longer fully human. The Zephyrian Empire had joined the Alliance after seeing sensor readings of the approaching Devourer fleet. Admiral Vextar now commanded 200 alien vessels, equipped with the same architect upgrades as Earth's ships. The proud Zephyrians had swallowed their arrogance when faced with extinction, accepting human leadership in exchange for survival technology. Commander Lisa Parker materialized on the Guardian's bridge using matter transport systems that still amazed human engineers. Her body flickered between dimensions as she delivered reports from across the battle zone. Devourer scouts are probing our outer defenses. They're adapting to our weapons faster than projected. Ben studied the tactical display showing the enemy formation. The Devourer ships were geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly, each one the size of a city and covered with weapons that converted matter into energy. Behind the attack fleet, massive constructor ships began harvesting asteroids and converting them into more war machines. "How many are there?" Ben asked, though he dreaded the answer. Amy consulted her enhanced sensor systems. 17,000 attack vessels confirmed, at least 50 constructor ships. Unknown number of smaller craft, total mass equivalent to half of Jupiter. The numbers were staggering, but Earth's defenders held their positions. They had been trained for this moment by beings who had fought the Devourers for millions of years. Every ship captain understood that retreat meant the end of all organic life in the galaxy. Dr. Alex Stone's voice came over the communication system from the Retribution, his words transmitted directly into their enhanced minds. "All ships prepare for quantum coherence firing pattern. Target the constructor vessels first. If we can stop them from building reinforcements, we might have a chance." The battle began when the Devourer fleet reached weapons range. Beams of Pure destruction lanced across space, striking Earth's ships with enough energy to vaporize mountains. But the architect's shields held, bending space-time itself to deflect attacks that should have been unstoppable. Ben gave the order to return. Fire and watched quantum weapons reach out across impossible distances. When the exotic energy beams struck Devourer ships, the enemy vessels simply ceased to exist. Their matter converted into other forms of energy. For the first few minutes, it seemed like Earth might actually win. Then the Devourers adapted. Their ships began shrugging off attacks that had destroyed them moments before. New weapons emerged from their hulls, firing projectiles that ignored shields and armor alike. The mechanical intelligence controlling the fleet was learning and evolving faster than anyone had thought possible. "We're losing ships," Amy reported, as warning lights filled her displays. "The Devourers are countering our weapons too quickly." Kate watched the battle from Earth's command center and felt her enhanced heart sink. Despite all their preparation, the enemy was simply too advanced and too numerous. Humanity's greatest weapons were becoming useless as the machines adapted to every tactic. Captain Harrison's voice cut through the despair. "All ships fall back to Earth orbit. Activate the stellar collapse protocol." Ben felt his blood turn cold. The stellar collapse protocol was the ultimate weapon the architects had shared, but using it would require destroying Earth's sun. The explosion would vaporize the Devourer fleet, but it would also eliminate the entire solar system. "Captain, that will kill everyone on Earth," Ben protested. "Not everyone," Harrison replied grimly. "The evacuation ships are ready. We can save 20% of the population if we act now." The choice was terrible but clear. Earth could die, fighting and save the rest of the galaxy, or surrender and watch all organic life disappear forever. President Collins made the decision over the planetary communication system. "Begin evacuating major population centers. All volunteers for the final defense should report to designated stations." What followed was the most heroic hour in human history. While evacuation ships carried as many people as possible toward distant stars, Earth's defenders prepared to sacrifice their world to save the galaxy. The stellar collapse weapon required all remaining ships to form a quantum resonance pattern around the sun, using their combined power to destabilize the star's core. Ben positioned the Guardian at his assigned coordinates and watched other ships take their places in the pattern. Many of the captains were people he had served with for years, now transformed by architect technology, but still recognizably human in their courage and determination. "Quantum resonance at 40%, Dr. Stone reported from the Retribution. "All ships maintain position." The Devourer fleet sensed the danger and began concentrating fire on Earth's defenders. Ship after ship died holding the line, their crews choosing to complete the mission rather than retreat to safety. The stellar pattern held even as enemy. Fire reduced their numbers. Admiral Vextar's flagship exploded in a ball of exotic fire, but the Zephyrian commander's last act was to transfer his ship's power to the quantum network. Across the battle zone, aliens and humans died together defending a world that most of them had never seen. "Resonance at 70%, Amy announced, her enhanced mind calculating probabilities at superhuman speed. "We might actually pull this off." The Retribution moved to the center of the quantum pattern, its hull glowing brighter than a star as it prepared to trigger the stellar collapse. Captain Harrison stood on his bridge surrounded by crew members who were no longer entirely human, all of them ready to die for a cause greater than themselves. "Resonance at 90%, Dr. Stone reported. "Stellar core destabilization in 30 seconds. The Devourer fleet made one final desperate attack, concentrating every weapon on the Retribution. The great ship's shields flared and sparked under impossible energies, but held long enough to complete the mission. Stellar collapse initiated, Harrison announced. All ships evacuate immediately. The sun began to die, and with it, the solar system that had been humanity's home for thousands of years. But the explosion would create a quantum shock wave that would sterilize this entire region of space, destroying the Devourer fleet and buying time for other civilizations to prepare their defenses. Ben watched from the Guardian's bridge as Earth's sun swelled beyond its normal size, preparing to become a weapon of mass destruction. The evacuation ships were already jumping to hyperspace, carrying survivors toward colony worlds that would have to rebuild human civilization from scratch. The stellar explosion, when it came, was visible from neighboring star systems. A new star briefly outshone everything else in the sky as Earth's sun died in nuclear fire. The quantum shockwave raced outward at faster-than-light speeds, catching and destroying every Devourer vessel in the system. When the light faded, the solar system was gone. No planets, no asteroids, no trace that human civilization had ever existed there. But the galaxy was safe, at least for now, and scattered across dozens of colony worlds, humanity began the long process of rebuilding. Admiral Ben Walsh, as he was now known, stood on the bridge of the new flagship Retribution 2 and looked out at the stars. The original ship and its legendary crew had died in the stellar explosion, but their sacrifice had saved billions of lives across the galaxy.